So, I don't know, just a show of hands, did most of you hear my story this morning in the morning session? Most of you did? Okay. All right. So, I'll kind of skip most of it, but I guess just in recap, for those of you that weren't at the class this morning, I was moved out to California from a company that I was working for, and at that time I was very prideful and very self-centered, and that led to just a crash in my life, where I just hit rock bottom. I was divorced, estranged from my two sons, my son Josh here and my son Tyler on the phone there. And they were like 2,000 miles away, and basically became mentally ill, was on the verge of homelessness, didn't really have a home, was kind of crashing with some acquaintances and things, and just my life was in complete ramsacked and ruined. And from that, I met Bruce Williams, and he basically gave me a place to live and helped me spiritually rebuild my life. And then God just kept quickly making things happen. Make a long story short, for those of you that heard the story already, there was a lot of details, but to make a long story short, God resurrected my life to give me a very successful company that became an Inc. 500 company. It was an ad agency called iDirect Marketing. It was the 90th fastest growing company in the U.S., privately held out of maybe 30 million different companies. So that was, really an amazing blessing. And then in 2007, it was one of the top 5,000 growing companies, privately held companies. So we kind of kept growing it. I think one point that I did want to make is that all that opportunity really came from my relationship with God. And that's something that I shared this morning, was because I was willing to help a brother out that wanted a young, I was like 32 at the time, he was maybe 18, 19, he wanted somebody to mentor him. Because of that, he introduced me to his company, which gave me the training, the sales and marketing training that I eventually needed to have my own business. So me wanting to help him, God used it to help me. And then Bruce Williams had a neighbor that moved in 2 doors down, and he wanted to study the Bible. Bruce asked me to do that, and I was reluctant to do it because I was a single dad, and I was with my son Josh, and he was going to go back to live with his mom, and I wanted to really cherish the time that we had together, but I reluctantly did it. And through that, he ended up being a business owner who did become a disciple, who became my best friend at the time, and he had a successful business which inspired me to want to have my own successful business. And then he had a yacht, he had a birthday party, and he invited my wife, Kalah, and that's how I met her. And so because I reached out to him, and because I was willing to go there, I got a business out of it. And that's the best part. And then God totally rebuilt our life. Just to give you kind of a recap so you kind of know, we have 5 kids, and three of them are adults, and they're all disciples. And the 2 oldest are married to disciples. And then we have 3 grandkids that are amazing. And we have 2 young ones that are amazing, and then we have one that's engaged right now. He's a disciple, and he's engaged to a disciple course. And she just recently got baptized because they were just got restored. He got restored. Then they broke up, and then she started studying, and she got baptized. And then now they're engaged, and then she reached out to her friend who got baptized, and then he's reaching out to his friends who they're studying and will probably soon be baptized. And so you kind of really see this chain of impact. We really decided to focus on our family, and Carla's mom got baptized. And now, basically, for sure, when we get together, I showed a picture of all the, kids, the grandkids, and this huge, amazing family. When I came out to California, I was here all by myself, no family, no friends, no nothing, hit rock bottom, was deep in debt, had to dig out of that hole. And then God, blessed us in this amazing way and allowed us to become multimillionaires. So it was just a great, like rags to riches. But it was all through God. 100% of it was God, and none of it was really attributed to me, because if I would have continued without God, I probably would have been dead or in a mental institution by now. And that's the path that I was on. So I want to, our class is the highs and lows of owning your business. I want to read from Ecclesiastes 12:13. We're going to hear from the wisest guy who ever lived. He says, now all has been heard. Here's the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commands, for this is the duty of all mankind. And, obviously here's a guy that experienced everything that life has to offer, every desire of his heart. You know the story. And what did he think was the most important thing? God. And so I want to say a quick prayer here, and then we'll jump right in. God, I pray that you would use me and say what you want to say through me, God. I pray that we can all really understand what our talents are, that we can use them for you, God, that we would be willing to submit to your leadership, that we would be led by the Spirit, that we would be filled with your Spirit, that we'd have the fruit of the Spirit, that we would desire to live lives of impact, that you would give us big dreams, God, and produce miracles in our lives. God, help us all to do amazing things for you and build the kingdom up to something that's a radiant bride for Christ, God. We love you. We need you. Be with us, God. I pray that that we can not just hear your word, but do what it says and really put into practice the things that we learn. In Jesus' name, amen. So I told you that when we were awarded the Inc. 500, whatever, that they decided to interview us, and they asked, well, what's the key to success? How do I have a successful business? And I told them, well, you got to know the Bible, put it in practice, and you got to have a lot of faith and pray a lot and be willing to, let God lead you. And of course they didn't publish that, but that's the truth. And so I'm going to get into some of the practicals that I've learned. So, this isn't, I'm not a professor. I didn't write a business book. I don't have anything like that, but I'm going to share with you the principles that allowed me to have this success. And when I look at other disciples, it's the same principles that they put into practice. So it wasn't just me and but it's the power of God's word, the power of his Spirit. And you do these things and, magic happens. First, I wanted to start just by saying that, I read this morning from Romans 12 that we all have different gifts. And a brother set me aside and said, I think your gift is giving. So you need to make some money so you can give a lot. And so, and at the time, it didn't seem like, wow, really? I'm deep in debt, I don't really have a job, I'm really at rock bottom. Me? Are you sure you got the right guy? But that was, now that I look at it, that was the gift that God gave me. And, it wasn't teaching, it wasn't, necessarily even leading, or, I mentioned earlier that I'm kind of an introvert and I don't necessarily like even being around people, to be honest with you. But, God's working on me, right? And he's trying to change me and I'm trying to grow. But that's the honest, if you want to read a story about these principles in practice and kind of a real life, read the story of Joseph. He was a dreamer. He had a dream. Hopefully all of you have a dream. How many here has a big dream for God right now that you could articulate?
Bits and pieces.
Okay. So if you didn't raise your hand, I hope and pray to God that you get the conviction that you need to have that.
Yeah.
By the end of the week, that by this time next week, that you will have a big dream that you can go for. And I'm going to explain to you why. So Joseph had a big dream, and his dream was that he'd be, greater than anybody in his family, and obviously that didn't go over very big because they already hated him, and so now they hate him even more. And so, obviously that didn't go over really good. And then, but God was with him, and God gave him success in everything that he did. But he did his part, right? God was with him. He's with all of you. But Joseph did his part, and because of that, people said, well, wow, I don't have to worry about anything. Just give it to Joseph. Like, I don't even have to worry about it anymore. And and that's, if you guys can do that with you, wherever you're at with your work or whatever, if you can be the go-to person that, give it to them, and you don't have to worry about it. God will rise you up and make you great. And so read the story of Joseph. One of the things that he said at the end of all this, when after his brothers sold him into slavery and all that kind of stuff, and the dad died, and they're worried, like, what's going to happen to us now? Joseph says, but Joseph said to them, don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. So then don't be afraid. I will provide for you and your children. And he reassured them and spoke kindly to them. So at the end of it, Joseph, it was really clear to him that this is God. Right. He went from the dreamer to I'm going to be the greatest in the family to telling Pharaoh, I can't interpret your dream. I can't do anything, but God can do it, and giving God all the credit and all the praise and all the honor. And so you could see how God trained him to be able to lead a nation, and also, in having the right character and having that sense of humility and really to have that understanding of who God was. I wanted to share with you, I came to something like this, like there was one in Chicago, there was one in Boston, and I met some other entrepreneurs, and we kind of got together, and I just wanted to share something that I thought was really interesting about this group. There was, I think about 7 people or so. All of them were, 7-figure net worth, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, of dollars. And their disciples are your, brothers. And it was interesting that we went around the table, and they all had these things in common. They all were leaders in the church, either had been on staff, had led ministries, had done something really significant for God, and served it at big capacity, and been in the church for a long time, and been, God's been working on them for a long time. And I just thought it was interesting that out of all of them, all of their kids are disciples, 100%, which is really kind of a rare, sit at a table and to say 100% of their kids are disciples, that's a pretty rare thing. And the other thing that I thought was really interesting is that they all have big, dreams for God. That they didn't stop. That they didn't stop dreaming. They didn't stop believing. They didn't stop. They big dreams, like to have train missionaries around the world, to put campus ministers where there's not a church. In Division 8 schools where there's big college campuses like Kentucky or Kansas or wherever, and 500 people have been baptized through those ministries, and they've now been trained and led up in leading ministries all over the world. And then with the missionaries that were trained leading churches all over the world. So I mean, these are guys that really have a big dream for God. So I want to say it again, maybe if you don't have a big dream for God, maybe that's why God's not blessing you the way that he wants to, because he's kind of like, well, he'll just, he or she will just get sinful with it and, forget about me or whatever. So definitely, keep that in mind. These are some of the lessons I learned in the School of Hard Knocks. Be like Jesus and keep his commands. Philippians 3:10-14. I want to know Christ, yes, to know the power of his resurrection and participation in his sufferings. He realized that Jesus suffered a lot, and that if he wanted to be like Jesus, he was going to have to suffer, becoming like him in his death, and so somehow attaining the resurrection from the dead. Not that I've already obtained all this or have already arrived at my goal, but I press on to take hold of that which Christ took hold of me. Brothers and sisters, I do not consider myself yet to have taken hold of it, but one thing I do, forgetting what is behind and straining toward what is ahead. I press on toward the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus. So even Paul was like, hey, I haven't arrived. I'm a work in progress, and I want the prize. I want the reward. I know we don't talk about that a lot but God did a lot. Talked about rewards, treasures in heaven.
Right.
Why are we afraid to talk about it? Hey, I want a huge spiritual bank account in heaven. I want lots of treasures when I get there, I don't, who cares about here on earth, because, we're going to die and it's going to go to somebody else. So, Paul really did it for the right reasons. He wanted to be like Christ. He wanted to know him. He wanted to have that relationship. He wanted to, he wanted to win the prize. He wanted to get rewarded. He wanted to go to heaven. So make sure that you're like Jesus and imitating him. Let God lead you out of your comfort zone and take chances. And I shared this earlier, and this, hopefully this will never leave your mind. You'll remember this for the rest of your life.
All right.
I said that this morning, but I really hope that's true. The wind blows wherever it pleases. You hear its sound, but you cannot tell where it comes from or where it is going. So it is with everyone born of the Spirit. We talked about how there's different winds, hurricanes, tornadoes, some that are really powerful and, cause chaos and craziness, and then there's the calm, and then there's, a cool breeze, and then there's a warm breeze, some warm summer breeze. There's all these things, but you have to put your sail up. If you don't, if you're not willing to talk to somebody sitting next to you, if you're not, you hear the Spirit telling, go talk to that person, or there's a brother or sister in need and you feel compelled to help them or talk to them or say something, or, for me, I met my wife because I studied the Bible with Bruce's neighbor, and I got my business because of that, and I was able to know how to have that business because I, was willing to help another single brother that was 18, 19 that looked up to me because I was the old guy at 32.
Come on, old guy. I'm 35.
So I want to tell you to just put up your sail.
Right.
Let God, take you where he wants, right? Sometimes it's going to be really calm and still, and maybe he needs you to reflect or learn or whatever. Maybe there's times he's going to put you in the hurricane, and it's going to be crazy. But, hang on. Put your sail up and let God take you to where he wants to take you. Be open to God's will, to his prompting, his desire to create opportunity for you. Nothing, I can pretty much honestly say that none of the success that I had was some master plan that I had. I wrote it out and I had this strategic plan, and I went to business school, and no, it was just oh, you want to get together with me? Okay. Oh, you want to hire me? Okay. You want,
Right, Jack?
we're going to get more into that, but put up your sail. Don't ever forget that. When you go outside and you feel the breeze, or you feel the wind, or you hear the wind, or just think about the Holy Spirit, and just remember. Okay, I'm gonna let God take me where he wants me to go. And so hopefully you'll never forget that.
Come on, Dad.
Have the right motivation of why and for who. Hebrews 12, Hebrews 12, verse 2 through 3. Fixing your eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith, for the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of God. Sometimes, I'm just going to stop real quick. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross. Jesus wanted reward too, and he wanted the prize too. And he did it for, because he wanted that. He wanted the, he had been in heaven. He knew what it was like. He wanted to go back there, and he wanted this new, he wanted to be sat down by, by God's throne, and it's not wrong to want that. It's not wrong to desire to have God reward you, and it's not wrong to to do things because you want to go to heaven, and you want to be there, and you want to have rewards there. That's not, unless you see it differently, it sure seems to me like Paul did that. Sure seems to me like Jesus did that, at least the scripture is saying that. So consider him who endured such opposition from sinners so that you'll not grow weary and lose heart. You're always going to have like the haters and the naysayers and the people that are going to be like, you can't do this, or, for me, believe it or not, the very guy that I studied the Bible with, that I was telling you about, he basically thought it was a joke that I was going to start a business or have a business or whatever. He was a naysayer, and I'd asked him to participate in my company. He wasn't interested in it, or have me participate in his company. He wasn't interested in that. So, I had a girlfriend in the kingdom at the time who, was not the person that God wanted for me. And, she was a naysayer too, and just thought I was a joke, to pursue this business or these clients or this dream or whatever. So you're always going to have that, even from people in this, look at Joseph. It was his brothers that hated him, and it said that they were jealous, and I found out later, because this brother that, was kind of not believing in me, I basically asked him to do a bet with me that my company would generate more revenue than his, and he's like, well, it might do that, but you're not going to make any profit. Okay, well, let's do it on profit. And he wouldn't do it. He wouldn't bet me, because so I don't know what that's all about. If you really thought,
you really thought you were a joke.
Yeah, then why would he not want to make that bet? So, anyways, you never know what people are thinking or what their motivation is. Luke 10, verse 17 through 20, the 72 returned with joy and said, Lord, even the demons submit to us in your name. He replied, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. I have given you authority to trample on snakes and scorpions and to overcome all the power of the enemy. Nothing will harm you. However, do not rejoice that the spirits submit to you, but rejoice that your names are written in heaven. Amen. So, like these guys are fired up. Look, oh man, even the spirits, and we're like out there, and we're doing all these great things for you, and we're talking to people and preaching and teaching, and even, the spirits submit to us, and all this, and this great. And Jesus is like, wait, like, don't get excited about that. Like, get excited that you're going to go to heaven. And so don't lose sight of that. Don't lose sight of, as God blesses you and you have success, don't be like, yay, like my bank account went, above zero. Whoopee, I don't know if you ever thought about that, I was thinking, I actually have a negative net worth. How can I be worth less than zero? But anyways, don't be excited about a number or whatever. Be excited that that you're going to go to heaven. Amen. And in Matthew 6:19 through 21, it says, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." So make sure your heart's in the kingdom. Make sure you have kingdom dreams. Make sure that you're doing it for the right reasons. Again, I just think that this is really key. And here's just a little side note that I used to use, and maybe it's a little mind game that I played on myself, I don't know, but I really believed it. Like when I went to talk to a client, and and I'm like, have this little ad agency, and I'm going up against these world-known brands and companies and big names, the biggest industry leaders, billion-dollar companies. One of our clients was like, on like Worth magazine or something as like the new blue chip of IBM or whatever. Like big companies, and it can be daunting to go in there, knowing that I'm up against companies that have thousands of employees and a team of PhDs and all this stuff, and it's just me walking into a room with a pad of paper and a pencil or something, and not even a business card there for a while, and so it can be pretty intimidating. But this is what I used to think. I used to believe that God would rather have me have it
That's right.
than them.
That's right.
That was really big, because I always like thought that, like going into a meeting, God wants me to have this and not them.
That's right.
And then I used to also think, the other thing I would think was, I'm going to do more good with the money than anybody else that gets that money.
Yeah.
So, that money should come to me. That's where it should go.
That's right.
And then I used to believe they're really lucky to have me as a vendor, because God's blessing will be upon them. If you read about Joseph, God was, blessing was upon the people that he was serving.
Wow.
And maybe I'm the only hope that they have of becoming a disciple.
Yeah.
So these guys are super lucky that I'm walking in here and asking for their money.
Yeah, they are.
And I really believe that. I really believe that. And you have to believe that when you're up against it, okay? Because, otherwise you can just like shrink down and be like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Like, I'm just this, and these guys, and, So you got to sometimes really, have that kind of, that core belief. Be a disciple of a successful entrepreneur. I know that Kalah and Jonathan spoke about this. This is probably my, one of the number one like how-tos, is to find somebody that will disciple you and mentor you as an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
There's a couple of different ways to do that. One is like, you want to go have an ad agency like me. God, put me on the client side, so I learned what it was like to be a client, and then I hired an agency and had a bunch of agencies come in and talk to me, and I was able to pick their brain and eventually have one as a mentor that eventually, we'd talk and talk. He had to talk to me because I was giving him money, and he had to answer me because I'm, answering, again, giving him money, and so, I learned the business like inside and out, and then I eventually worked for him. And again, just work, learn all the details of having this business. Like, what do I do? How do I do it? How do every little thing? What are all the pieces? Like,
Right.
and I just like was a sponge, learning. So that's one way of getting a mentor is like, what business you want to go in, whatever you have to do. Most entrepreneurs are like, they know that somebody helped them. They want to help somebody else. They also are very receptive to like crazy ideas, most of them, because we're crazy risk takers, right? And so, you tell them something, hey, I want to learn what, I want to be your Joseph, where, I want to make it so that you don't have to worry about anything, or whatever you have to do to like get a foot in the door, to have integrity. I know somebody, people would come to me and one person, wanted to be an intern. He goes, I'll work for free, and I think that lasted for a day. He worked for free, and then I started paying him, and then, he leveraged that experience to be in charge of marketing for another company and make a lot of money, and there had been, one of the guys that I had mentored in the business, when we were looking to buy a house, it's a Newport Coast, we were like looking around the house and we're like smelling that somebody's cooking steaks, and we look over and it's like the guy that used to work for me that I trained. And he was living in Newport Coast, And so, people mentored me and I mentored people and so that's one way. Then there's, there's spiritual mentors, there's, like they talked about where you get somebody that's older, somebody that's younger, somebody that thinks different than you. There's a lot of different, and the more you're open to that, the more your mind's going to be expanded, and the more you're going to be like, God's going to open up doors and say, oh, you like this, you do that, okay, well, hey, what about this? And you'll be shocked that God will open up a ton of doors if you're willing to be humble and teachable and get other people to mentor you. And you'll be shocked that, that people are willing to help you. You might think, well, what, why would they do that? How, but they will. You ask a big ask, and they're like, Oh, okay. And if they say no, that's okay too. Just find somebody else, because there's, how many billions of people on the earth? It doesn't have to be just one person. It says, Warren Buffett had Ben Graham, where he was just like a disciple of Ben Graham, and he learned the investing business, and he accredits him for all the things that he learned, and and he was a student, and he just basically, what do I do? And so most really successful people do that, and in Mark 1:17 through 18, Jesus says, "Come follow me," Jesus said, "and I will make you fishers of men." And once they left their nets and followed him. So, Jesus believes in that too, obviously, like the whole idea of discipling and mentoring, and, obviously that's, a given. And then once you find, a mentor, a discipler, or whatever you want, do what they do. Don't try to like, oh yeah, well they're doing this, but I'm just way smarter than that, and I would do it this way or that way or whatever. Don't do that. Do what they're doing, and you'll get the same result. And then once you get the same result, then you can kind of take it to the next level and say, okay, let me be even more successful. Like, what can I do? And then maybe learn from somebody else or whatever. Get a lot of advice, and then take it higher. But don't start analyzing and second guessing and all that kind of stuff, unless it's something that violates your conscience, or they're telling you to do something wrong. In John 14:12 through 14, I tell you the truth, anyone who has faith in me will do what I have been doing. If we have faith in Jesus, we're going to be doing what he's doing. He will do even greater things than these, because I'm going to the Father. And I will do whatever you ask in my name, so that the Son may bring glory to the Father. You may ask me for anything in my name, and I will do it. If you love me, you will obey what I command. So again, this whole idea of just imitate and have faith and believe, and and especially in Jesus, obviously, because he went to the Father and he can hook you up.
What's up, God?
Here's, there's all kinds of statistics, but they say, basically that 80% of companies fail because they run out of money. And so that's a big thing. And this is really hard to get in people's heads, is that don't run out of money. You can't run out of money. It doesn't work. Don't run out of money. But people do it, and that's why their businesses fail. You can't spend more than you can't spend more than you're bringing in. I learned this kind of on a personal level when I was deep in debt. I went to a financial seminar with church, and it was a brother that got up there and basically said, get out of debt, pay off your debt, live way below your means, save, that kind of thing. And Josh was living with me at the time, and so, we got 1976, 2002 car for like $500. So we bought a $500 car that used to fill up with smoke, and we had to roll the windows down so we didn't get it, so we didn't suffocate and get CO2 death poison. And then we lived in this little one studio, flat in Dana Point, and basically Josh had a bed, and it pretty much took up the entire living space. Was like the bed,
Slash couch.
Yeah, so that became like our everything, our couch, our dinner table, our bed, our everything, and then God blessed me, and I had a job where I was, my salary was $20,000 a month, and then I was eligible for a realistic bonus, like $150,000 a year.
Yeah.
And I was driving a 2002 $500 car, and you should have seen the looks I got when I drove up. Them knowing how much they were paying me and stuff, and the owners would roll up in there like Ferraris and stuff like that. And I'm trying to park way in the back, so they don't see me. But some people did see me, and I was like, I didn't say anything, but I was kind of like, yeah, well, what are you gonna say, So, you either have to, I don't know how many of you guys watch Gold Rush, but there's the show Gold Rush where they are gold miners.
Yeah.
Anyways, there's like one guy on there, his name is Tony Beats, and he's like old school guy. He came as an immigrant and had nothing, and he like, you can tell like he wants to make sure he doesn't run out of money. So he's always thinking about expenses and how to be more efficient, and so he gets these dredges, and he's thinking long term because he wants to build for his family, and he does, like, so he's really taking this methodical, like, and he's building his business organically because nobody dumped money on him. He had to like make a little and then he reinvested, make a little bit more. And so he gets that. So that's the way I built my company. I had taken like $5,000, on credit card or something, and that's how I built my company. Direct Marketing was on, and I made sure that I really controlled expenses. I mean, this brother that I was telling you about that, had his business. My business was in his home, in the spare room with like this old glass shaky, table that basically, fell apart. And then I talked one of the brothers into telemarketing for me for free, like before his other job, straight commission. Yeah. So, I mean, we were, on a shoestring, right? And God just really blessed it. But you either have to do that, or you can be like the Parker who, his grandparents, gave him money, his parents, then he did this TV show and they gave him a bunch of money, and then they have all these sponsors that provide equipment, millions and millions and millions of dollars worth of equipment that he doesn't have to, really pay for because of the show, all this stuff, and he's like going for it and wants to outdo everybody. And that's more like a Facebook or a Amazon or something like that, where you have to have like outside funding where somebody's like feeding you money, and you don't allow it to run out until you can get to a place where you're profitable, or you lose hundreds of millions of dollars, one or the other, right? So those are the two ways. And so either find somebody that's willing to fund you, on a consistent basis, or you're gonna have to do it organically and make sure that you really control your expenses, and that you always bring in more than you spend. That there's the cash flow there. You got to pray specifically in faith. This is really, really important. Like, one time I was leaving work, I was really kind of just really burnt out. It was a long day, and I get this call, and it's like, Lending Tree was a client of ours. I don't know if you ever heard of them, but they were like, hey, are you ready for our meeting? Our big wig senior VP is flying in from North Carolina to meet with you. And I'm like, I didn't, what? We don't have a meeting, and he's like, I think he messed up, and then he realized it, so he called me, and I was like on my way home in like jeans and a t-shirt, and they had flown the senior guy in to meet with me, and I'm like, okay. So I went home, changed my clothes, and on the way there just prayed really specific things that God would, that we would get, I don't remember all the details, but very, very specific things about, a campaign that we wanted to do with them, and the level, and increase the business, and give us this and do that, like really specific stuff. And so, and then I threw in this, God, make it be you, and make it be obvious that it's not me. Make it obvious that it's 100% you and all you. And I don't know if was a good prayer or not, but so I get there, and my sinuses start draining, and I was coughing uncontrollably. I couldn't really see. I couldn't really breathe. I'm just just a total. And they're like, "Oh my gosh, are you okay? What's going on? Can I get you water? Can I get you this? Can I get you that? Can I, are you going to be okay? Can we do this meeting? And I just couldn't get it together the whole time. And then I'm trying to squeak out a couple of words, and then eventually the meeting ends, and that's not the only time that this has happened to me. At a big meeting where I prayed that prayer, let it be you. That's happened, it wasn't you know, the only time that it happened like that. And sure enough, like, you know, I'm like, okay, well, I probably blew it, probably not gonna happen, okay, we'll get a new client, do something else. But then they're like, you know, yeah, let's do it, you know, we're on board, let's go, you know. And there's a lot of stories like that were, you know, it just, you know, it was God and prayer and specific prayers, big, bold prayers. You know, work hard and be excellent. John 5:17-18, Jesus said to them, my Father is always at his work to this very day, and I too am working. And that really kind of hit me because I never really thought about that. Like, God's working? Jesus is working? Like, you know, I don't want to work. And they're working. You know, like, was just kind of an interesting concept. But we have to work hard and be excellent. Proverbs 22:29, do you see someone skilled in their work? They will serve before kings. They will not serve before officials of low rank. You know, if you're good at something, God's going to raise you up, and you're not going to have to worry about, you know, really anything, because people are going to be beating down your door to get to you. Never give up. In Galatians 6:7-9, do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. The one who sows to please the sinful nature from that nature will reap destruction. The one who sows to please the Spirit from the Spirit will reap eternal life. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. You know, Joseph had 7 years of feast, followed by 7 years of famine. You know, I don't know if any of you watched the movie The Big Short, you know, or read the book, but I read the book and saw the movie. If you read the book, almost every single company that they talk about were my clients. And so we were like really riding high on it, you know, and it just crashed. I mean, the whole world, you know, and our clients were, you know, supposedly the ones that helped really facilitate that, you know. So, you know, you don't know what's going to happen. And so, you know, God wants to do a new thing. And, you know, I can say that, you know, I talked about that this morning about having a dream, and, you know, it was my dream to do, I had a 10-year plan to, you know, I went to a financial planner when all the bad stuff was happening and said, okay, you know, I didn't tell him this, but I got the gift of giving, and I need to like retire in 10 years so that I can do something else. And then, you know, can you put together plans of how much I have to have so, you know, that in 10 years I can retire? And he's like, okay, like, you know, he kind of knew where I was at, and he's like, well, why don't we like make it 20 or 30 years or something? And, you know, and I go, no, it's got to be 10 years. And, you know, God did that. You know, God, 10 years later, I had that plan, and I looked at it, and God had exceeded that goal. And you know, it really close to it, like within like 10% of what the goal was, you know, like 10% over, you know. And I was like, wow, that's pretty crazy, you know, because I'd kind of forgotten about it. And here's the big thing that hopefully you can, you know, learn from my mistake. I think one of the biggest mistakes that I made was, you know, I had that 10-year plan, wanted to retire so I could work for the church. It didn't really work out that way. Like, they didn't really, you know, wasn't in the cards for me. And so I was just like, oh my gosh, okay, now what do I do? Nothing, you know, and just fell on my face. And that, like, you know, like that scriptures I read this morning about, you know, Proverbs 29, where it talks about, you know, if you don't have vision, you perish. If you don't have a revelation, then you're gonna throw off, you know, restraint and just get sinful and just kind of start, you know, you got to have a dream. And I wish I would have had a team of mentors that could have been like, okay, you know, so God did this miracle, okay, it's time for the next miracle, you know, so let's, you know, get on board. And so now I'm in the process of, you know, there was kind of some things that kind of spit and sputter that I did and got involved with that were really amazing and had a lot of impact. But now I'm more, you know, like, okay, I got to have something at all times. Like, I have to have a big dream. And if it comes to an end, then I have to have another really big dream. Right? And so, you know, right now, you know, it's still in process. I'm trying to like leave a legacy through my family, make sure that, our family is really strong, and I keep saying this, but that they stand on our shoulders, that they reach levels, 10 times what we can do. And I see it already. They're, all my kids are like so far, like light years ahead of where I was at their age, like light years. And then I see their kids and I'm like, they are so amazing parents. Like, they're like a million times better parent than I am. And then I see their kids and I see, wow, their kids are like, like my wife and I, when we are visiting or hanging out with, we're like, okay, we got to learn from, from our kids how to parent, and then we got to learn from our grandkids, how to be, like one granddaughter's only like 2, so she's pretty young, but the one that's watching, that's in Minnesota, that has 2 girls, she's like, talking to my son, and she's like, Uncle Caleb, can you do this? And he's like teasing her, Uncle Caleb, can you please do this? And and she's like, 2 years old, and then she, he's not working with her, and she's like, Uncle Caleb, I'm getting very frustrated right now, and I need you to like listen to me and help me right now because I'm feeling frustrated. And I'm like, wow, I didn't learn to do that till I was like 55. So guys, make it all about, have a dream. If you don't have a dream, get a big one. Do it today, do it soon. Don't ever be without a dream. Like Roger Lamb had said, something to me, he said, that I shared, I don't ever want to outlive my dream. So always have a dream. Put your sail up, let God guide and direct your life, and see what he's going to do with it. Okay? Thank you for your time. And now, Kayla's, we're like, an hour into this. It's supposed to be a 3-hour thing. She can,
That's it, only 2 hours.
however time she wants to take, and then at the end of it, then we'll have time for Q&A if you want to stick around for that.
Thanks, DJ.
Thanks, Dad.
All right. I promise not to cry this time.
You cried, John.
Guys, okay. It's all right. Jesus wept.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. I was just being obedient. All right. Awesome. Thanks, DJ, so much. I'm just going to pretty much follow that same outline that he had, actually. I'm just going to give a little bit more background about myself, my experience as an entrepreneur. I'm just curious who in here either already has a business or is thinking, or who has a business already? Oh, wow. That's a lot. And who is thinking of potentially starting a business? Great. Very good. Very good. That helps me. All right. So my name is Kalah Haley. I'm from Denver, Colorado. I grew up in the church in Denver, as Jonathan said. I guess like everything I've done, I guess I can attribute it to Jonathan because of the classes that he taught. He's such a great Kids Kingdom teacher. But I just want to kind of talk through a little bit my journey. So I grew up in the church in Denver. I went to college in Atlanta. I went to Spelman College in Atlanta. And I actually didn't graduate. I have one last class that I need to finish, Organic Chemistry 2. Now you know why. But as you can imagine, my parents were very disappointed. But I came home from Denver actually pretty discouraged. And this was in the spring of 2015. And I was disappointed myself. My parents were disappointed. I failed the last semester with that last class, and it wasn't a great season of life. But I came home and I was like, man, Spelman was expensive. That's a lot of student loans. And I think it's hard because when you're starting school, you don't think about that stuff. You're just told, go to college, get into the best college that you can get into, which consequently means the most expensive school that you can get into. And it's kind of like, the loans, that's just, you'll deal with that for the rest of your life later, right? I was like, man, what was that?
Bad advice.
Bad advice. Yeah, it's like mortgages and student loans are good debt, right?
Bad advice.
I don't know who, someone told me that. So I came home from school and realized, that's what they tell you. As I came home from school and I realized, I was like, wow, that is a lot of debt. And studying biology, I thought I wanted to be a doctor. I thought I wanted to serve and do hope type stuff. But I think realizing, I was like, okay, that's another 10 years of school on top of the debt that I already have. I don't know that that's worth that. And so I came home and I was just kind of racking my brain. And I'm like, gosh, God, like, what do you want me to do? What can I do that really will impact you or impact the kingdom and, to be quite honest, get rid of this debt. And so I was just thinking about it, and I originally started a podcast. And if you guys don't know this about me, I love MMA. I'm huge into UFC. I know, fun fact. Don't mess with me. And it was great. It was the first step to my journey. And kind of like what DJ was talking about, a lot of times there are going to be these iterations when you start a business. You think that you're heading in the right direction, but no one hits a hole in one usually the first time around. A couple months later, I realized, and I did have some financial backing when I started that. The person who was doing that, they figured out, they're like, nah, I don't want to spend money on you anymore, pretty much. And so I realized, I was like, okay, I need to pivot. I need to pivot this into something that I can drive revenue from day one. And so I started my marketing agency. And it was pretty much, I was doing it for myself already and realized, I was like, wow, I actually can do this for other clients. So, like I said, I came out of college and I started bootstrapping. And you guys familiar with that term, bootstrapping? So basically the idea of starting your business from your own money instead of having an investor. And so, you know, again, talking about the motivation, sometimes the different motivations for starting a business can be financial, it can be out of desperation sometimes. For some people are just not good employees. They're just terrible employees. Or sometimes you see a problem or a need in the market and you realize you have a particular set of skills that can help fill that need. I guess I would ask, I want to make this more interactive. Out of the businesses that have been started, why did you guys start your business?
Flexibility to meet my family's needs.
Okay, yep, definitely. Time flexibility.
Social justice and earning money at the same time.
Okay, cool, very cool.
It was originally just a hobby.
Just a hobby, yep, very cool.
I was in college and I wanted to make some spending money.
There you go, there you go.
I just have a hard time working another man's schedule.
Yeah, yep. It's good.
I had a conversation with a brother who said somebody has to stay back and pay for the missionary work.
Yep, that works.
Same thing.
Mine was, it helped me so much, and I saw the need, and feel like God called me to.
Yeah, yeah. Do you have something?
I could have something.
Oh, okay.
So there's multiple reasons why.
Okay.
There's financial independence. There's my particular trade that I educate many and give them financial independence. So it's very rewarding in both aspects.
Definitely. Definitely. Last one. Yep.
Yeah, same here. I don't like being broke. Our son has ADHD and he was forever getting in trouble in school. And so if I worked a regular 9-to-5 job, I would have been fired a long time ago. And on the topic of being broke, I just didn't. My husband in his business has been so amazing as far as helping other people, but sometimes that costs, and you get into that position where you're not making as much as you would like. And we lost some of our rental units, and I didn't want to see him stressing out over that, so I started my own business to help out financially, and it's been going great.
That's awesome. Some of the best businesses have been started out of necessity, right? Because it's when there's no other way, you make the way, right? Obviously, God allowing that to happen. And so, like I said, my motivation is still to get out of debt, and even just in kingdom, talking about the dream for the kingdom. Once I realized when it came to creating content online through videos and podcasts and things like that. Those are some of the things that we do at my agency. I realized, I was like, wait a minute. Why is it that you have people over here selling, computer parts, or you have these huge companies, whether it be, you guys watch YouTube a lot? Anybody like to watch YouTube? More than I should, right? I didn't say raise your hand. So, you have all these huge companies, Nike, all these huge brands spending their ad dollars sponsoring these content creators because they have these huge audiences. And I'm like, why don't we have that in the church? It literally is like, okay, I understand that, we've got disciples today, and we've got these great infrastructures, right? But to me, I'm like, the world is taking advantage of these things, and we're not. And I feel very passionate and I have a deep conviction about that, which is why I reached out to disciples today in the beginning. But that's still one of my huge goals. I want to be in a position to where financially I can be out of debt and create a media infrastructure for the church where we're not just doing something internally for disciples, but where we're reaching most millennial and Generation Z young men are on YouTube. And we always talk about, man, we need more guys. Okay, well, where are the guys? You're on YouTube. And where are we? We're not on YouTube. And so I'm really passionate about that. So if anybody has like a bunch of money and wants to you didn't realize you were walking into a pitch.
No, good girl, pitch away.
Exactly. So kind of talking a little bit more about my story. So, right, so I was motivated, I still am motivated, but there are going to be the times in the process where you get discouraged. And so I remember I'm super motivated, and I'm learning everything that I can about digital marketing on YouTube. And I come to this place where I just felt, I remember it was 2017, and it was my 24th birthday. And I remember just being so depressed. And I don't know that I don't think I struggle with depression, and I'm very sensitive about saying that because I've never seen a doctor about it or anything like that. And I know a lot of people have, so I try to be sensitive about it. But that day I was. And I just felt very discouraged about where I was in life. Just feeling like, wow, I didn't take advantage of the opportunities that I could have. My mom talking about haters. My mom wasn't the most encouraging about it. My parents are disciples, so I love them. But it was, I could feel, it's true. Hopefully, I don't know if this is recording, so she'll see this.
Yes, it is.
But,
All right, be real.
But she wasn't, my mom is very practical, right? She's very practical. She's like, okay, well, you're working this hard. Where are the dollars, right? Where are the dollars to prove that this is working, right? And she wanted to see immediate results. And I was like, dang, all right, I'm working on it. And it became a source of discouragement for me. I really, as a kid, you really want to please your parents. You really want to, what it did is it gave me this huge chip on my shoulder. And I just was determined. I said, okay, I'm not even gonna come upstairs. I lived in the basement at the time. I'm not even gonna come upstairs until I have money in my bank to show you. And I did, more or less I did that. And I basically I was working this temp job at the time, and I would make calls during my lunch hour, and I would, after work, run to different people's offices, different prospects that I had, and meet them before they left to go home. And I would meet them on the weekends and do all these different things. And my mom, she just was like, I just see all this stuff and I just don't see any results. And so I got to this point where it was on my 24th birthday, and I just got really discouraged. I got really down on myself. I felt like, God, why are you against me? I really felt like that. I really felt like God wasn't gonna bless what I was doing. Think about faith and deeds. I was like, God, I've got the faith and I'm putting in the work. I'm not being lazy. I'm doing 2 jobs right now. And I just don't see the results. Like, where are you? And yeah, and I felt really discouraged. So, but you know what I learned, and I'm gonna read this scripture in James 4, verse 2 through 3. You desire, but you do not have, so you kill. You covet, but you cannot get what you want, so you quarrel and fight. You do not have because you do not ask God. When you ask, you do not receive because you ask with wrong motives, that you may spend what you get on your pleasures. And I remember reading that scripture and just really being cut to the heart. And even in that, even after reading that scripture, I still remember feeling defensive. Like, and no one showed it to me. I just was reading it and trying to figure out what God was doing with me at this time. And I just remember, like, okay, Kalah, what is your motivation? It gave me an opportunity to really have some self-reflection, and like, obviously that, you know, the financial element is real, right? It's like, you don't do this for fun. You're not doing it as a hobby. You know, it could turn into a hobby. You know, it could turn into something more than just a hobby. But when you're trying to establish your life, and as a young person, you feel these pressures of showing people that you can take care of yourself. There's definitely that ego that can get in there. There's that ego. Like I said, I have that chip on my shoulder to prove to people at church, because it's not like I said, I grew up in the church. So when I came home and you had to tell everybody I didn't finish school, that's not a fun conversation to have. And even to this day, there are people, there are folks where you're like, you avoid them in the fellowship because you're like, dang, I do not want to have that conversation today. And that's all we talk about. So it really gave me the opportunity to, like I said, really reach down into my heart, find the pride and ego and insecurity that was there in this wanting to prove to everybody that I could, you know, run a successful business. And it was through, and you know, the fruit that it was bearing in my, on my tree of life at that time was just selfishness, not wanting to spend time with anybody, just wanting to bury my head in work and like make something happen. I mean, I was being open at the time, but it didn't change the fact that there was the pride of not allowing God to do what needed to be done, but really me trying to make something happen. And I know God was not going to bless that. And so in that time, my heart softened, and just the confession of just being open and honest about this chip on my shoulder, the insecurities that I had, the fear of failing in front of everybody, and that's real. I remember talking about it with my parents and other people in my life, and I think what it did for me is it softened my heart, but it also reminded me of what my spiritual ambition was in the first place. It's like, Kalah, like God didn't give you this dream and this vision of doing this business so that you could satisfy your ego. He did it so that you could serve and really help the kingdom. And so that was a turning point in my life throughout this journey of remembering what my true motivation was to begin with, the motivation and the dream that God put on my heart. And it was at that time that I got refocused. And I was like, okay, all right, God, thank you. I appreciate the reminder. And I remember we had the Youth and Family Conference in Denver that fall. And so I was like, okay, I need to build my portfolio. And so I went to, initially it was Wade Cook, but then he handed the conference off to Sonny Ryan. And I was like, Sonny, I want to help with this conference. How do I do that? And he was like, sure, come to the meetings. And so I came to the meetings and I prepared a little pitch for him and I said, Sonny, I think we really need to do more video for especially youth and family. We're talking about kids. They're on Snapchat, they're on YouTube, they're on social media. We need a strategy to reach and engage them. And he was like, you're right. And I was like, oh, great. Okay, cool. Like, what's my budget to do something? And he was like, budget? And I'm like, what do you mean there's no? So I learned that lesson. So basically at that time, but I was still passionate about it. And I said, okay, I'll do it myself. And so I paid to do it. I paid to do a 3-day video series of the conference and vlog. You guys can check it out on the YouTube channel. But it was in that time that I built, those relationships, and through that I realized, man, I can continue to do something more. And went to Disciples Today and talked to Jonathan, stalked him, as you guys heard earlier. And a year later, he was like, yes. And I was like, wow, that took a long time. And then from there, it's just continued to build. The relationships I've gotten to build with Sean and some of these other folks, I think what really God did is that he softened my heart to purify what those motivations were, so that he could open the doors, so that he could entrust me to really handle the opportunities with care and with diligence. And so I want to kind of shift gears here for a second. So the first section was dream, motivation. The second section here is strategy and getting more into some practicals. So for those of you who have a business or who are starting a business, I need 3 volunteers. Okay, 1, let's see, 2, and 3. Can you come on up?
Oh. Waiting for directions.
Sorry. Can you introduce yourselves to the group?
Poppy Massey,
Lisa Rowley.
Matthew Santiago.
Perfect. Where are you guys from?
Mission Viejo.
Los Angeles.
Oh, I forgot. Central Jersey.
Woo! All right, East Coast. Okay. The West Coast versus East Coast. No, I'm kidding. Play nice. So, in this second section, I just want to talk a little bit more practically about what it looks like to actually start a business. And so, we're going to talk a little bit about strategy. So, you said you started your own business, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's your business called?
ACN.
ACN? Is that an acronym?
No. Well, yeah, it is, but we just don't use the long term anymore.
Okay, what does it stand for?
American Communications Network.
Okay, what is your business about?
So I teach people how to get paid on their own utility bills and other essential services.
Okay, cool. Very cool. Very cool. All right.
I geek help for you. I do technical support services.
Oh, nice. Very cool. Very cool. Okay, great.
Pure Light Productions. So essentially the idea is to take a true filmmaker approach on what Christianity is like, because most films our Christians are mostly video sermons, whereas in my opinion. So I just want to take a real look at what Christianity is like and show it to others in means of either films, documentaries, or podcasts.
There you go. Clearly, we are on the same wavelength right there.
Yeah.
All right, so what I wanted us to do is do a little mini branding session. And we'll do this a little bit later on too in our Q&A session. Hopefully we have some time for that. But I wanted to ask you guys each the question. So with your company ACN, describe your company in a sentence.
We teach people how to get paid on their utility bills.
Okay.
And essential services.
Okay, perfect.
I'm IT for organizations too small to have an IT department.
Nice. Oh, nice. Okay.
God is the most creative person ever, so let's be creative in understanding Him.
That's great. That was great. All right. Good job, guys. So, next question. Who do you serve?
Short-term rental operators.
Okay, what does
Real
that
estate
mean?
Professionals. Oh, just so my husband and I have another company where we teach individuals how to utilize real estate for short-term rentals, i.e. vacation rentals, corporate rentals, and the like. So that means we have a lot of real estate that need internet, TV, utilities, phone service, so on and so forth.
Okay. Cool. So very cool. Who do you serve?
Organizations too small to have an IT
Got it. Got it.
So are you saying what my audience is?
Yes.
Okay, my audience would be those who are, I guess, looking to understand Christianity or already a part of the church.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. And then my last question, and this usually trips a lot of clients up. Who? No pressure. No pressure. Who don't you serve?
I don't serve people who are naysayers.
Okay. What does that mean?
That means people that gotta question me about every little single thing about how it works and how much does it cost and what, and I don't believe it's gonna work and I don't believe in that type of business model and I don't I don't serve them.
Okay. Okay.
Negative people.
Oh. All right.
I don't serve anybody who's already got IT people.
Okay. Okay.
Anybody who says you can't, like, because I'm sure that there are plenty of people in terms of, like, I guess, who are extreme, who could say, oh, like, you can't portray Christianity this way, or you can't portray was an atheist that way, or something like that. I think that anybody has their version, like their ideas, interpretations. Like, film is subjective, so I think that everyone has a right to kind of like share their story and understand and show people like how they see the world.
Okay. All right. Let me ask you guys, the audience. So, do you think you guys understand clearly who their target audience is? Let's start with ACN.
Yeah.
Okay. Can someone describe it back to me?
People who own real estate that's rented out for short term.
Okay.
Airbnb, corporate.
Okay. Did you guys all kind of get that same message?
I got that they're all about making sure you get paid for your utilities.
Yeah.
So they offer the service to the small time, your vacation rentals. And in return, you get paid for your utilities that you have.
Okay, great. What about, what is your company called again?
Geek help for you.
Geek Help for You. I like that. What about for Geek Help for You?
Very clear.
Businesses or individuals that are too small that
Oh,
don't have their own
just
IT
Okay.
Hands down.
So one thing I would ask is, define too small.
You know what? I have some clients who are literally one person working out of their home, and my biggest client has 2 offices and 60 staff.
Okay. So solopreneur up to small medium business.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Go ahead. Oh wait. So for the last
Pure Light Productions.
Pure Light Productions, do you guys feel like you understand what it is that Pure Light Productions does and who they serve? Can someone repeat it back to us?
What I got out of it is it's like having reality TV for a disciple's life, and being able to show the world how a real disciple lives without, it being scripted, so to speak. But hey, here's what life looks like to live for Christ, and obviously he's doing it on the other end for people who don't believe in Christ.
Okay, awesome. Give it up to our. Awesome. You guys are awesome. No, so the reason I did that, and I wanted to kind of go through that exercise, is because a lot of times, a lot of businesses have a hard time defining what it is exactly that they do, right? A lot of times I'll walk into a branding session with a client and ask, okay, great, who's our target audience? And I hear everyone, and I'm like, no. And a lot of times, yeah, sure, you want to service everyone at some point, right? Get to a point, and maybe you don't actually. I always use the example that Amazon started off selling books. The Amazon that is today in 2019 is not the Amazon from 1993. They've worked from books into small electronics, into
Everything.
healthcare. right? They service, they do
Street, I just go.
web services now. So I
Now
think
they're opening up physical bookstores.
yeah, now they're opening up. They're full circle, full circle. And I guess the point is that when you're starting a business, and especially as a small, we have these huge dreams as entrepreneurs, but it takes real discipline to be able to narrow down. Okay, great. What is my first product that I'm going to sell? What is the first audience that I'm going to serve? And that's going to kind of take us into this point here, is how we're going to define success, right? Because if you don't have an idea of who you serve, what market you're going into, who you don't serve, it's going to be very difficult for you to be able to measure specific goals, or what we call KPIs, and key performance indicators, to be able to identify, okay, great, I know that I was successful because these are the goals that we aimed to hit, and we hit them. Or, these are the goals we aimed to hit, and we didn't hit them, but at least now we know why we didn't hit them, which is equally as important. And so those goals that you want to set for yourselves need to be SMART goals. And have you guys heard of SMART goals before, right? So what's the S? Okay, there you go. A. Wow.
Risky.
You guys are great. Oh man, we need you more. Okay. And even though we know those things, it's going to be hard to actually put those things into practice, right? So, for example, in my business with marketing, and I'm sure DJ knows all about this, is, okay, great, if I'm running a campaign for someone on Facebook or whatever the case may be, I need to know what the exact statistics I'm looking for that client. One, so that we can set those expectations ahead of time, so that they know, okay, great, this is what we're aiming for. And on the back end, we can say, great, we hit those expectations, or we didn't hit those expectations. Otherwise, we're just kind of like throwing money around, which I know of clients that are currently spending $1 million a year on their digital marketing strategy, and they have no idea what their goals are. And I'm just like, wow, I wish you would spend $1 million on me every year and not hold me accountable to what the goals are. I'm like, what other world are we living in? I wish. So that's important. Does that make sense? And then the last section I want to just talk about here is implementation, right? So we've talked about, we have this dream, we have this motivation, we purify that motivation. We really have talked about how we define success, what it even looks like practically. And then lastly, implementation. I think, who's heard of analysis paralysis? Have you? Someone was like, Tell me, you guys give me a little bit of feedback. Have you had that? Have you experienced it? Every day.
Well, not me personally, but with my clients.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead and share.
One of my big issues has been, what do I even want to name? Like, I want to start a Facebook group, I want to, or a page and things that people can go to so I can advertise my workshops and things. But I'm like, I for the life of me cannot decide on a name for what I want to push on this.
Yep, that makes sense.
If you think of those big organizations that are succeeding today, what's happening is their learn fast is such a key to their success, right? You try something, you figure out if it's going to work or not, it tells you how to iterate to get to your result.
Exactly. You're talking about with your clients as well.
Yeah, you present something to them and it's just like they want to overanalyze every little, and then they just get stuck in analysis mode.
Exactly. I think the key, especially as an entrepreneur, just like what you're talking about, is you just have to start.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, okay, great. We've got these plans. We know what we're looking to do. And it reminds me of the scripture. Someone has read it already before. Proverbs 16:9. In their hearts, humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps.
Right.
And it's like, okay, great. We know generally where we want to go. I think sometimes we can get too micro and look at every little decision that gets made. rather than looking at the macro and saying, okay, great, I am generally heading in the right direction. I might get a little bit off course left and right, but that's the point of having those KPIs and those SMART goals to be able to say, okay, great, I know I'm off course, this is how I need to get back on course. Going back and remembering your motivation, like I said, going back and remembering, okay, for myself, I started small. Again, we have these huge motivations and these huge dreams, but realizing, okay, great, what is the first step in that direction? For me, it was doing free videos for the Youth and Family Conference in Denver. Yeah, investing money that I had to do that, right? But it built off of that. And a lot of times I think we can think, okay, great, I want to go and sell a six-figure contract in the first year. And realizing it's like, okay, this is going to take a little bit longer than what we initially thought. And then lastly, it's through those small steps, it's through those, just like the parable of the talents, right? Where you had the different servants that was given different amounts. You know, we can be the servant that started with 1 talent, and sometimes again we can get that, we can become paralyzed and I was afraid that I wasn't going to do what you wanted me to do with it, and so I just decided not to do anything. And that's not, we don't want to do that. That's why I named my company St. Rock Media, because I'm like, Peter just, he was like, step out on the boat, okay. Just, he didn't know what was gonna happen after that, but he just knew, okay, God said to go, and so I'm gonna go, and he just did. He didn't know the plan in general, or like the overall plan. He just knew, okay, God's over there, and I'm gonna get over to Jesus. And so, through those small steps, God always gives us more. Once we've shown that we can, that we're excellent stewards of the small things that God gives to us, just like in the parable of the talents, the one who had, who didn't do anything with his one, he said, give it to the one who has the most. And we end up, God gives us even more to manage and to handle. And so in the last, just to kind of give you guys some context, like, it's been, this journey for me has been up and down. Last year I did sign a 6-figure client and was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And, but then the company that was paying me became insolvent. And so very quickly realized cash flow management. I learned that lesson pretty quickly. And realized, okay, great, like, wow, this is gonna be volatile. I need to be prepared to handle my expenses and handle my business expenses, my personal expenses, and put like a ton of money away so that I can continue to run my business. But just recently in the last 2 weeks, I actually was just able to hire my first 7 employees to my company. And yeah, it's just been an incredible experience of learning now just how to be an excellent steward of working with different clients, but in transitioning that now into learning how to be an excellent manager, which that's a whole nother thing. So that's kind of just my story, and I hope that you guys are able to take some things away that were helpful, and I think we're going to open it up into some Q&A.
Yeah. Why don't you stay up here, please?
Oh, okay.
So the thing that I forgot to mention about cash flow was just making sure that you have, I call it like an anchor account, like something that pays the bills, whatever it is, even if it's a part-time job, whatever it is, you got to have like something that's consistent every day, every month, every week, that's going to keep the lights on and pay the bills. And, you know, and whatever your expenses are, that'll determine how, you know, like for me, setting up my company in a spare room on a glass table that's all rickety, and a cheap phone that barely worked, and having free employees, you know, that kind of, I had to, you know, have enough money to like eat, you know, that was my thing, right? So my number was really small, and so, you know, I was just like, okay, well, I'm ready to do whatever I have to do. If that means I get a job at night and work during the day or whatever, you know. Fortunately, God really blessed me in that the company that I worked for, I had, remember I told you about the guy that I worked for that had his agency, and then I learned the business and I ended up working for him. He unfortunately had a drug problem and went bankrupt, and and so I brought on clients, and it was basically was able to like take them, just like transition immediately with some clients, so I don't know how God's going to work with you or for you, but make sure that you have something, not just like some lark or some once and but something that's consistent that'll pay your bills and keep the lights on, and and work another job if you have to until you have something that's going to pay the bills. So we're going to open up to questions. Anybody that wants to ask questions? Okay.
What do you think about investing in your business before you have the money to do that? So I've gone to a lot of professional conferences, and I hear over and over and over again, oh, you've got to invest before you can, profit and invest in your, and I would like your Christian perspective on that.
I'll give an answer. We can both give answers, but for me, if you have the money invested, again, it's all about, cash flow, and if you have enough, then there's two ways to start a company, like we talked about, either bootstrapping organically or from outside money.
No, they're saying like borrow money to dump into your business so you can grow it.
I'm sorry, what?
The philosophy of loan. Yeah, loan,
pick out a
getting
loan.
loans, yeah.
I think that's a personal decision. If you have the money, if you have your own money, you can do that, or if you don't, then you can get outside financing. Just make sure that it's enough to see you through, because
But what's your conviction of that?
Personally, I'm not, because I'm not a people person. I'm not the guy that could have an Amazon, because I'd have to be dealing with investors and do the dog and pony all the time, and deal with a lot of people and have people manage me and all that kind of stuff. Like I don't want people up in my business like that, right? So for me, I don't want anybody's money. I don't want any, if I can't figure it out on my own, then I'm not going to do it. So for me, that's my personal conviction. But then probably my company's, if I would have just, it's not going to be, multi-billion-dollar company probably, because of,
Yeah, I'm just torn with the advice.
I wouldn't do it, but that's a personal, personal decision.
But you mentioned you took out a $5,000 loan or something like that.
I have credit card debt, yeah, credit card advance, yeah. So I guess in a way that's a loan.
Is it for buying product, or what,
Yeah, product, or investing in your team, or, saying
you have lines of credit then.
IT guy, or a VA guy, or whatever.
Talk to Harvard, they're like, how do you put fuel on a business? Debt, add more debt. So there's a lot of people that are big believers in debt, but I'm not.
No,
But
I'm
that's
not either,
just
but
me.
I wanted to hear your perspective.
Yeah, I had actually I was speaking at Denver Startup Week last fall, and we had the Q&A session, and one of the ladies at the meeting was like, you should get an investor, and I was like, no thank you. And the reason why is because the moment you have an investor, you have someone that you have a fiduciary responsibility to, and if you're an entrepreneur who doesn't want a boss, you just volunteered yourself to have a boss. And then the second thing is, if you're going into debt to start your business and you haven't proven the business model to begin with, I just don't think that's a good idea. I think you go into debt because you have a proven model and you already know where your money is coming from, but you don't have the cash up front to purchase for product or inventory or something like that. Kind of like on Shark Tank, when they say, show me the purchase order. And they just don't have the cash to make that product, even though they have the order ready to be purchased.
And she brought up a great point, and there was I forget what billionaire, some famous rich person had like a child that wasn't, had special needs, or, not, extreme, but, and basically the advice was, find where the money's flowing and get in the middle of it, and That's so true, because I think a lot of people start businesses where they don't know, it's not a proven business model, or, money, no matter who ran it, wouldn't make money, So if, depending, I mean, there's like job, there's businesses of passion like this, I gotta do this for God. So there's that, but I mean, if you're doing it to make money, then, pick a business that there's lots of examples out there of people that are making money. Try to get a job with that company and pick their brain and learn, and all the, find out exactly what they're doing and do that. So that's the quickest way. To try to start a business that's not proven, or some, business model that's you don't know much about, is dumb. And I did it once, and it was dumb. And
All right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good.
I mean, I was able to sell equity, a small equity of my company. But the agreement was, they have no say, they have no management involvement. I make all the decisions. And it's worked out okay.
That's good. Contracts are important.
Exactly.
That language
Exactly.
is just how you want it. Yeah.
Yes.
Sure. So you were talking about, Kayla, you're talking about target audience. How do you look at all of your potential customers and figure out what's the most beneficial audience to target? How do you decide who you should and shouldn't serve?
Yep. So it depends on the business, right? So for example, if you are selling toothbrushes, right? But even then you have to realize, okay, great, there's a reason why Schick, or that's razors, but Oral-B or something like that has blue and pink toothbrushes, because those things matter, right? And so realizing, okay, great, if I'm gonna, depending on who I'm targeting to, you can go from either way, right? You already have a product and you need to figure out who it best suits, or you have an audience that you specifically want to serve, and then you need to tweak your product to best serve that client, right? And I'm sure with
Geek Out for You.
Geek Out for You, I'd imagine that you probably have different services or offerings for the solopreneur versus the,
Right.
60-person
Yeah.
team, right? And so, and the other part is testing. That's the great thing about that I'm really passionate about with digital marketing, is that you can split test for really inexpensive, like online. And then you can determine, and rather than having to guess, and you have some data to be able to say, okay, great, this audience, this product is best for moms in suburban areas who have 2 to 3 kids ranging from 3 to 7 years old, and they make this medium household income, right? So you've really narrowed down who your target audience is, so that when you're selling your product, okay, great, this is exactly how this audience responds to my marketing. This is how they respond to that specific product, my messaging, all those different things.
Yeah, my only comment would be, either if you're trying to look for your target, if you already have clients and you kind of, what are they, lookalikes for your best clients. You don't have any clients, and you might have to take a guess at it. But there's a lot of, like, online now, there's so many different tools where you can test different campaigns and things, and just see how people vote with their dollars, and know what works and what doesn't work. And then there's even, for people that do have clients, like we used to do some really like crazy stuff, like get PhDs to, build algorithms, like, append like 300 pieces of information on the clients, and then build these mathematical algorithms and be able to like identify what the statistically significant variables are, and then build a mathematical model. So I mean, there's like all the way to something crazy like that, to like, well, I got to start somewhere, so I'm just gonna use my best knowledge. But if you are having a mentor for a business, then you can kind of see, who their clients are, and know that those are the ones that you're gonna want to go after.
So my question is in regards to mentorship. Of course, everybody would love to have a mentor. Well, maybe not everybody, but most people would love to have a mentor. How do you suggest approaching people I guess in the most successful way to be able to gain a mentor in a particular area, that's going to be willing to, and now we never know what the person's willing or not willing to do, but it's someone that is not trying to extract every penny from you to gain just a little piece of knowledge. So like what should we be looking for in a person to try to go up to them, and what should we say, or how do we get somebody to do that? I mean, it's kind
So I
of
think it
very
depends on what your life stage is. Like if you're, a college student, then maybe you can volunteer and be, the Joseph of like, what do you not want to do during the day, and let me do that for you, and I'll do it for free. And then, most people are like, they'll pay you, even if you offer to work for free, if you're good, they'll be like, oh my gosh, I don't want to lose this person, I'm going to start paying them. So there's all the way from that, like, to somebody that can do that, that's in a situation where they don't have to get paid a lot right now, just to learn something, to go through that education process, to target somebody that knows what they want to learn, all the way to like, I can't do that, because so then it's just, there's these 10 businesses that I've been able to identify that are doing what I want to do, and it's, and it's just taking a chance and just, calling them up and just, and maybe you'll find somebody that's, older, that has success, that's not fearful, that's not, like protective, and, and they want to help somebody. And you can just say, hey, I really love what you do, I really admire your company, I'm super interested in it, can I buy you lunch, can I get a couple minutes of your time, can I come over, bring you coffee from Starbucks or something, and can I just sit down and ask you a few questions about your business, because I'm really, really fascinated about what you do. And if you ask that of enough people, somebody will say yes.
Yeah, I think something that I've learned over the last couple of years is I like it when people say yes, and I don't like it when they say no. So I will do my research with the people that I really want to hear a yes from. And so if that's someone either in church or outside of the church, I'll do my research on LinkedIn, on Facebook, kind of figure out like what their interests are. And this could be a whole nother conversation, but yeah, I do, literally. The information is out there for free, right? And so I'm selling them, in a sense, to be my mentor. And so I'm gonna figure out what are your motivations to wanna mentor me. And sometimes what I've realized with some mentors, their motivation is they want a mentee that they can like brag about to their friends. Like, right? They want a successful mentee that they can be like, yeah, I mentored that person. What's that?
It strokes their ego.
Yeah, it's true. For other mentors, they just don't have time. And so if you can offer them something, just like what DJ was saying, about, hey, I saw, and this is how I started in the beginning too, even just to get clients, was I would look at their Facebook page and look at what events they had going on upcoming. And I would say, hey, I noticed that you have this event going on in a month or so. I'd like to offer you this free marketing service for your event. And then it makes them look good in front of their boss. So those are some tricks and tips I've noticed about increasing the likelihood that someone would say yes to you.
I heard something on public radio where this guy was really fearful to do things and say things to people or ask for things. So he just like went to the complete opposite extreme. And he's like, I don't know, like for 6 months, I'm just gonna go out and just ask people just crazy things. Like I'm gonna come over to their house, I'm gonna say, hey, do you mind if I put a trampoline in your backyard and get my workout in for an hour, and like crazy stuff like that. And I forget the percentage, but an extremely high percent of the people would say yes to the most wacky, crazy things. So I don't know. You can do all that stuff, but you might want to try the path of least resistance first and just ask and see maybe they'll say yeah. I don't know, but
I just wanted to add something. I was just talking to Josh about it here. I've been in the youth ministry for a number of years, And I feel like serving other people's kids has helped me get a connection with their parents.
Yeah.
So in one case, I have a parent that I've been connected with for like 5 years. I can always ask them about what I could do more with my business, and I'm even writing down notes like, hey, I can go back to them and say, hey, I need some more mentorship. But in a way, you're serving your church, because we have a lot of these mentors already in our church in some way, shape, or form, depending on how big your church is. Find a way that you can serve them, whether it's with their kids. I mean, your guys' story was amazing, that so different, yet there was a connection through God. I think it's the same thing. It doesn't have to be, oh, I'm mentoring this guy, so I can only talk to the dad. I can also see if the mom's a very successful entrepreneur and find that as an opportunity. So maybe that's a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
How would you define mentorship? If you were to say to someone, this is what it is, how would you define that?
Yeah, I think there's like what I feel like other people have offered to me versus like what I really would want from them.
Yeah.
And I guess how I would define that is someone who really, and Jonathan, I wasn't expecting that from him, but someone who really cares about you holistically. Your development, obviously with a business mentor, someone who cares about developing and helping you to grow and mature in that area, but also someone who really cares about you and how things are going on at home and just your own development as a person.
Yeah.
And that's what I personally desire in mentors.
So my question was about working with, I guess, clients in the church. Like, where do you draw the line between like friendship and business? Because my experience has been I've been local because like they're like, oh, you're my friend, So you feel like inclined to give this huge discount, or like feel like, oh, but I'm serving you. You know what I mean? Like, how do you draw between like business, friendship, and serving all in one thing?
All right, well, so, kind of how I handle it is like, I'll do like up to a certain level from people that I don't have a relationship with, but then if they start like wanting more time or more, I'm like, okay, you're gonna have to pay me for that. Like, you went beyond like just asking me a few questions or whatever. You have a skill, I have a skill. You get paid for your skill. I want to get paid for my skill. I don't have time to like work for you for free. And so then it's a personal decision. Maybe you have a really good friend that you're gonna give more to, or you're gonna give a bigger discount to, or whatever. I think it's got to be more of a personal decision about what you have to give, what you can, how much time you have, boundaries, having healthy boundaries of what you can and can't do, and not letting people, I've had some people really like pursue me like heavy, but I'll tell them something and they don't put it into practice or something, and I'm like, well, you didn't even do the last thing that I told you, so, we're not gonna get together again, you don't really want to hear what I have to say, so there's different ways to have boundaries and stuff, and I think it's just more of a personal decision of what you can and can't do, what you're willing to do, what you can, but I think that we can all love each other and help each other and serve each other without giving people free stuff and free services, necessarily, unless they really need it and they're starving, and then there's a biblical responsibility, but beyond that, I think it's more like your own personal choice. But just have healthy boundaries, because I've been in the situation where I learned the hard way, like pouring like hours into somebody and they don't, and then I finally just realized you don't really want to get well, you don't really want to hear what I have to say, so we're not getting together anymore. So, so yeah.
Can I respond to that?
Yeah.
Kind of on the flip side, my general attitude towards going to Christians for services is, I want to pay your market rate.
Right.
I don't, because you're a Christian, I don't expect you to give me a discount.
Yeah.
Because as a businessman, I know it costs X, Y, or Z to run your business.
Yeah.
And if you're doing work for me, it means you're not doing work somewhere else. So even
Yeah.
if you're giving me a discount, it means you're not making money somewhere else, meaning you're not able to provide for your family. And so I've generally gone with the perspective of, if I'm going to a disciple for service, like, I'm not asking, and I told them up front, look, I'm not asking for a discount. I want you to treat me like you would any other client, and I will treat you like any other vendor.
Yes.
That if I don't think you're doing your job, I will fire you.
Yeah.
So it's very clear up front, like,
Yeah.
I would prefer to do business with a Christian,
Yeah.
and I'd prefer to keep it in the family, but I have no expectation that people are gonna give me a discount
Right.
just because. I personally have done work for other people, and it's either the work is totally pro bono, or I charge my market rate. I don't discount it, because I don't discount my services.
I think that's a great boundary.
Yeah.
And actually, Chris worked for a company that I ended up doing some stuff for, so I experienced that as being really how he does things.
And what happens when you get a discount is that you discount what I've noticed is that when people always want a discount, I'm not as motivated to work with them, right?
Yeah.
Like, you don't get the full product because you didn't pay for it. And so even and I can share about this because they don't mind, but even in home in Denver, so we're putting on the singles, little plug, we're having the Mountain Stock Conference this fall Labor Day weekend, so sign up. But I'm a part of the marketing committee, right, for that conference, and they're like, great, Kalah's a professional, she could do everything, and I'm like, no, I could, but you should pay me. And even in that, we're shooting a promo video right now, and it took some massaging to make sure people realize, like, hey, we need to pay Kalah's group to do this. And that's like a cultural thing that we're still kind of maturing in, I believe, as a fellowship, just generally. Obviously, we want to serve, and we obviously do that as well, but just like what DJ was saying, people are doing this professionally, and you're expecting a professional product and service, and that requires you paying.
And on the flip side of that, not only does you don't care as much if somebody's not paying you what you are worth, but they don't value the service. I know, like Anthony Robbins, he was trying to recruit me to do corporate seminars way back in the day, and he told me that, like, that when he did seminars at a discount or pro bono or whatever, people didn't really value it. And the more that they paid, the more they valued it, and the more they thought whatever was coming to them had like, oh, I'm gonna really take this serious, because I just spent $5,000 to get it. Like, but if they got it free, then it'd be like, whatever, So it works both ways. Any other questions? Everybody wants to go. Like, this is the last class, I want to go home.
3 hours?
Yeah, exactly.
Not a question, but a comment. She was asking about, figuring out your target audience, and I think it's important to understand what your market is. I was having a discussion with another business owner who lives up in Vancouver, and he was like, oh, Los Angeles, you could have a target market of one-legged ballerinas there because there's so many people. And I laughed and like, it's true. The more people you have in your vicinity, the smaller, the narrower your market can be and still be successful.
Yeah, good point. Well, thank you for coming. We appreciate it.